we immediately hit the deck because the Germans dropped in 3 good mortar shells just as we were getting off the bus, off the truck. And it was a pretty damn scary introduction to the war. Well, hello to all. My name is John Frederick Prescott. Not born, but raised in Downers Grove, Illinois.
Where were you born?
I was born in Chicago, 12/31/25.
So that makes you how old right now, sir?
I'm a little over 99. Trying to make it to 100. Yeah, I'm trying to make it to 100.
I'm sure you will.
Well, thank you.
You're really sticking it to the Germans. Not only did you beat them in the war, you're going to outlive them.
Yeah.
What's it like being 99?
Well, it was not bad until I fractured my hip. I was getting around pretty well with a walker and driving here and there,
You look like, you are...
But right now I've been disabled for the last 3 months, and it's been a pain where you know where.
I think you're being a little hard on yourself. It is incredible to see you the way, not just you are mentally, and but physically also. I mean, 100's a big number.
Oh, yeah.
To be almost 100. Yeah. So before we go any further, sir, could you, for the record, tell us about your childhood? You mentioned that you grew up in Downers Grove.
Downers Grove, yes.
What's your family story? What are your parents doing? Your siblings? What order were you?
I was the 6th child. When I was born, I was number 6. Later on, my brother Wally appeared in 1935, and so he was the 7th. And so I had two older brothers and 1 younger brother and 2 older sisters. And we moved out of Chicago, and when I was 4 years old, we lived on the north side of Downers Grove on Prairie Avenue. We were on a corner. We had 6 kids, the Prescott household. The Munsons had 6. The Welkers had 7, I believe. And the Finnegans crushed us all with having 13 kids. We were all within a 2-block area there in Downers Grove.
And tell us about your childhood. What were some of the things that you would do for fun?
Well, we moved from Prairie Avenue to Grand Avenue on the south side of Downers. And I started in 1st grade at Whittier School. And it was a fun time. The teachers were great. I remember especially Miss Gallimore in 3rd grade was just a beautiful and loving woman, and made 3rd grade great. Then we had 4 grades at Whittier School, and then transferred to Lincoln School. Start the 5th grade on the at Lincoln School, and that became the junior high school too. So we're 4 years at Whittier School, 4 years at Lincoln School, and then on to high school.
Where did you go to high school?
Downers Grove Community High School, the only high school in town.
And could you tell us, when you were growing up, before the war, before you went to the military, did you have any jobs?
Well, I was When I was 14 years old, I caddied 2 summers at the Ruth Lake Country Club, which involved hitchhiking from Downers Grove to South Hinsdale and getting those free rides, hopefully. I don't think I ever walked the whole distance. It's about a 5-6 mile trip.
And could you please tell us about...
That was my first job. It was 75 cents we got for carrying the bag 18 holes, and usually got a quarter tip. So generally picking up $1 for taking care of a golfer for 3 to 4 hours.
Could you tell us about your parents, their occupations?
Well, my mother was a mother and household person all her life. She had some brief experience working in Chicago at a bakery. But it was my father was always the breadwinner, and he was a bricklayer, or as he preferred to be known as a stone mason. And he got through the Depression barely. And was finally got to be earning a good income about the time I became a junior in high school. And the Depression was ending with the advent of the war.
What do you remember about the Great Depression? Some of the struggles that you noticed in the community?
Well, not the community, just our own family. It was hard to get any food on the table. I remember how some of the meals were delivered by being tossed out of a truck onto the front yard. I mean, it was so gross.
What do you mean the meals were?
Well, it might be a piece of meat, a big piece of meat. They'd go by and just throw it on their yard. I mean, why stop and bring it to the door, I guess. I don't know. But it was humiliating. My family was on welfare for a couple of years, I believe. They were tough times.
What was the furthest you went outside of the Downers Grove area before the war broke out?
Yeah, that's a hard question to answer. I just don't remember. We did have relatives in Chicago that I remember we got to see once in a blue moon. We didn't always have a car, which made it hard to get around, leave town at all. So, yeah.
Do you remember the World's Fair?
The World's Fair of 1933? Not too well.
Oh yeah, I guess you've been quite young. Some of the older veterans, a lot of people travel to that World's Fair.
Yeah.
It's a big to-do. So, before the war breaks out, what was your plan? What was your dream? What were you going to do with your life, Mr. Prescott?
I always had an ambition to be a writer of some kind, sports writer. And I wrote on the sports page of the high school paper. Yes, I was the sports editor of the Downers Grove High Life, my final year. So that was always an ambition.
Could you please tell us the story about Pearl Harbor? How did you hear about the attack?
Well, my mother sent me up to the Fairview grocer to get a few things for supper. It was 1941. And when I'm at the grocery store, we heard that Pearl Harbor had been bombed and that we were at war. And I ran home with the food and got on the radio and got all the news. Yeah, it was a big event. Really big.
What was that like as a young man to find out that your country was at war?
Well, I thought it was scary, and at the same time I was ready to go fight in the Army, whatever we needed.
Can you tell?
Even though I was just 14 years old, I guess. I guess I was 14 years old, yeah.
Can you tell us the story as the war progresses and as you get older? Take us through, how did you end up in the military?
Well, my senior year in high school, Harry Lehman and I were both December babies. We were immediately drafted, got draft notice in January of 44. And we immediately applied for a deferment and got it because we were seniors in high school and we didn't have to go right into service. And at the same time, that is when I didn't want to go in the Army, so I wanted to get into the Navy. And I made arrangements to enter the Navy when my draft call came up. We were deferred until we got out of school. So the idea was I did get into Chicago and passed requirements for to enter the Navy. And finally, that beginning of, I forget when I was finally drafted was July of 44. And went into Chicago. Harry Lehman was with me. He was going in the Army. I think it was July of 44 that I received the notice, or that we were ordered to go into Chicago for induction. Harry going in the Army and I going in the Navy. And funny thing happened on the way to the Navy. I got into Chicago and they said they just shoved me into the Army. They didn't need guys in the Navy, they needed people in the Army. So I ended up going into the same service that Harry Lehman was in. We wound up in Fort Sheridan that night, and we had a two-day pass to go back home in our new uniforms, and we were back into Chicago and on a train to Florida. Happened so fast you can hardly believe it. Question?
Take us through basic training. What was that like?
Well, we wound up in a camp called Camp Blanding, Florida, just west of Jacksonville, Florida. We got there, as I said, in the first part of July with the terrific heat. Guys were passing out as they just lined up to get a little marching orders. And it was the beginning of a 17-week training. And Harry got into one training company and I got into another, but we kept going, seeing each other as much as possible. And mourning the absence of our girlfriends. Yeah.
Who was your girlfriend?
Her name was Jean Nairmore at the time, when I went in the service. But she kind of gave me the air after she got into college.
Can you please tell us a little bit more about the physical regimen of basic training? You know, really describe the marches, the rifle range, the obstacle courses.
Well, I have to scratch the brain a little bit here.
Sure.
Well, of course, the first thing was you lined up in order every morning. You leaped out of bed and got into your duds, and you got out in the street of the
parade ground?
No, your own, what we call our own street in for the
barracks?
The barracks, yeah.
And this was for Reveille?
Reveille. Yeah. And then they had the break for breakfast. And then it was off to do any of the jobs that were expected. It usually involved marches of 2 to 5 miles every day. And of course, working and learning with the different weapons, the M1 rifle and the Browning automatic rifle and I can't remember the other weapons that we were firing, but it was all work to be done out on the rifle range from distances of 100 feet to the target to 500 feet. And because my eyesight, my right eye is practically blind, I had to fire the distance shots with the rifle on my left shoulder. And they all thought I was goofy, but I had to do it because I couldn't see it with my right eye. I had to sight through my left eye. So, but that didn't bother anybody that I was so poor of sight at that point. I was headed to become an infantry replacement. That's what the title of the camp was, Infantry Replacement Center. And we were being trained in 17 weeks to be able to fight in an infantry company somewhere in the world. I thought we were going to go to to the Pacific. But I found out later I was headed for Europe.
Could you please take us through the journey of how you actually end up overseas?
Well, first of all, after our 17 weeks of basic training, we had a 10-day furlough at home, which would have been in December. And from there, the orders were to go to Camp Kilmer outside of New York. And from there, we were put onto because of my eyesight, I had to be delayed to get special glasses in my gas mask. And in that period, I met this fella from North Dakota. His name was Ken Sauby. And we got together waiting for the final notice to where and when we were going. And he was, I think at the time, 28 years old, the father of 3 kids. But we had a feeling between us that was just good friends. And he and I, with about 10,000 other troops, to take that trip across the Atlantic. And I didn't realize that I was a victim of seasickness. That I think we had just finished the noon meal, and I started throwing up. The boat had just gotten out of the harbor, not very many miles, and I wasn't the only one. The vomit was all over the stairwells of people getting sick. And I couldn't stay down where the bunks were. I had to get up, and I laid up next to a garbage can up on one of the top decks and stayed up there for the entire 5 or 6 days of the trip, right next to a garbage can. And I don't know how many times a day I threw up, but finally, I believe it finally stopped. Interesting. And all that time, people were going by. I got to see Harry Lehman. He was on the ship. Dick Jordan from Downers Grove. A couple of guys from the training camp at Camp Blanding. And it was kind of fun to see everybody that that we were finally getting somewhere. Well, that trip finally ended when the ship docked in Glasgow, Scotland, and we got off the boat and headed for the English Channel, where we got on a landing ship transport, an LST, took us across the channel to Normandy. And doggone if I didn't get sick again and seasick on that little trip across the channel. And we were up in Normandy in the far eastern part of the channel, and then we were sent down. I believe toward Le Havre. Anyway, it was about a 300-mile trip by truck. And there we got our orders that we were going to go toward Bastogne and join the 6th Armored Division, 6th Armored Infantry Division. And Ken Saube was with me. We got off the truck to join the company, and we immediately hit the deck because the Germans dropped in 3 good mortar shells just as we were getting off the truck, and it was a pretty damn scary introduction to the war. We were assigned to Company C of the 50th Infantry Battalion of the 6th Armored Division. And we were in the village of Bastogne. From that beginning, we encountered shell fire every day of our existence. And that was the Germans' answer to the advances that we were making, forcing them back out of Bastogne and farther to the east, to the west. Saube and I, one night I remember, as usual, we were occupying a German foxhole that had been outfitted with logs across the top of it, and anything else they could get to put on top of it. It was a pretty safe place to be, to spend the night. And then this was our first experience of feeling the power of the German artillery, the 88 artillery. Landed, I think, maybe 24 feet away from our hole. And we both rose up inside that bunker, inside that foxhole, about 4 feet front to hit the top of those logs and come down again. It was just as scary as I ever want to be in my life. It was just petrified. But we lived through it. And we always tried, as we advanced, we tried to find a German foxhole that would match it, because it seemed like it was the safer way to advance. And then they started a full retreat, and we went on down. On that, the route that we were on, we did get to Luxembourg and Belgium. And we were beginning to get into parts of Germany. And we were about a month into the action about this time. And our next most interesting experience involved the Siegfried line, which was a line of bunkers that the Germans had built opposite the Maginot Line of France. It was called the Siegfried Line, and our division had the honor of trying to capture the Siegfried Line and erase it as a protection for Germany. So the idea was that our entire company would be spread out across the bottom of this hillside, looking up at the concrete bunkers forming the Siegfried Line. And we would attack it in a simple way with engineers from our company would come forward with a pile of dynamite on an A-frame, and they would be ready to put the dynamite in the doors of the bunker and blow it up. Now, so that was about a 500-yard carry up that hill to the bunker, and the engineers would be protected by 3 riflemen who would be going up the hill with the engineers with their guns, with their rifle fire, trained on the opening in the bunkers. So it was that's when I discovered that I was going to be one of the 3 riflemen in my area. And I knew that how ridiculous this whole plot seemed to be. And if it actually blew the whistle, we actually started up that hill, that would be the end of me. I would be killed. And so we stood there waiting for orders to go ahead. And from far left of our line came this truck with a megaphone mounted on it. It was talking German as it came down, talking German all the way, came all the way to the end of our line. Made it, as it turned back, started to turn back, we could see German soldiers coming out of the bunkers with anything white flag of any kind. They were surrendering. Every damn one of them surrendered, and without a shot being fired. It was just amazing. And my luckiest day that I can recall.
Yeah, so what were the trucks doing? They were saying, they were broadcasting in...
They were broadcasting in German language that surrender now and you will survive. If you don't surrender and we take and we capture you, we will kill you. You will not survive. So surrender now and survive. That was the key.
And wasn't there another one of the soldiers? He was a little bit older. Wasn't he freaking out about having to do this attack?
Yeah.
Can you mention that?
Yeah, I'm reminded of another fellow soldier. I can't remember his name right now, but he was also designated to be a rifleman, and he said he kept wandering around and wondering, can you believe what they're asking us to do? Can you believe what they're asking us to do? He just kept saying that, muttering it. He was right. Nobody could believe they were asking us to do this. Well, I don't know. I guess it's like we wouldn't be the only soldiers that ever went forward on a stupendous effort like that. Stupid, not stupendous. Stupid effort. I was just ready to go, you know.
After this incident, take us through what happened, sir.
My next big event occurred in February 26th and involved our company being ordered to take the town of Lüneburg, Germany, and take a bridge and secure a bridge across the river. And this was to be a night attack, which we had never done before. And it was unusually black night, pitch black. You could hardly see each other. Our attack started about 8 o'clock the night of the 26th. And we had lost track, actually, or I had lost track of the group ahead of me because you couldn't see anything. But I was in a ditch, and there was some fire we were receiving from our left toward our target, was responding with rifle and machine gun fire. And I was in a ditch that covered me pretty well. And one of my buddies was behind me, and he said, let's get up in that house. Let's get up to that house up there. I didn't want to do it, but at his urging, I did. I crawled up and I got up out of the ditch and in front of the house, and I said to Sabi, Ken Sabi was with me. I said, Sabi, are you in there? He said, yeah, come on in, we're all in here. So I went into a crouch and crossed into the open doorway, and the whole place blew up. There was several booby traps had been set throughout the house to be, fired at will. And it was just a terrific explosion. I was knocked out, and I remember sitting in that doorway, or lying in the doorway, and the blood was coming out of my head, and my feet, my leg, my hands they seemed to be on fire. My hands, my legs, my feet, they'd all been damaged by shrapnel. And I later discovered I had a .25 caliber bullet in my cheek here, in my jaw. But I remember thinking Mom is really going to be mad at you guys. Because I thought surely I was about to die. And as I laid there on the doorway, I heard Ken Saube. He was 40 feet beyond me in the road, asking for help. He had somehow crawled over me and kept crawling out the road as far as he could go. And I never knew it. You know, I was out so far unconscious. I never knew that he had been able to do that. And I yelled back at him, I'm going to try to get back, help you, and get help. So I did. I got out of that house, or that doorway, and crawled back toward the company headquarters and found help for myself and for Ken. And that was the end of my combat experience. Just by the skin of my teeth, I got out of it. Wound up in, I was admitted to a tent hospital for treatment, and they got after the shrapnel wounds, and then I was sent to Paris for another few nights before I was sent over to England to recuperate in a hospital in England.
Could you describe how were you able to muster up the energy, the stamina to crawl your way to your company headquarters when you were so seriously wounded?
I didn't. I've been asked how I got the energy to do that, but I don't remember that it was a problem. It was desperation that would give anybody the power to make that trip.
But the whole trip you were crawling?
Yeah.
And how far would you say you crawled?
But I think the crawl was about 100 to 150 yards, probably. It looked like I would crawl 100 to 150 yards to get from the building to company headquarters.
And do you remember their reaction when they saw you, sir?
No, I don't remember the reaction that they got, but I think I might have passed out again, because I do remember being in that tent hospital briefly. Yeah. I can recall laying there in that doorway. I had taken my gloves off, and my hands were full of blood. And everything, my legs, my feet, were all on fire. They felt like they were on fire. And I thought I was about to die.
Had you all been trained to look out for booby traps? Had you been briefed that the Germans would booby trap some of the houses?
No. Not that I know of. Yeah.
You were wounded. Your friend Ken was wounded.
Yeah.
Who else was in the house?
Well, I think as I look back on that terrible night, that house probably had 12 to 15 soldiers in there, and I'm not sure how many survived, but I'm sure they were all seriously wounded.
When you mentioned that the house blew up, because of the booby traps.
Yeah.
Did you get a visual of what the house looked like after? Like as you were crawling away, was it actually leveled?
No. And not level, no.
What do you believe set off the booby trap?
People have asked what set off the booby trap. And I'm not sure that I know, but the Germans had a way, a sophisticated way, to set it off when they felt was the proper time.
So you believe the Germans had a visual of the house, and when you walked in, that's when they...
Yeah. When I got there, they'd already decided that was time. You know.
So, moving forward,
Yeah.
Could you please tell us about your recuperation, the process, what the doctors had to do to fix you up?
Well, as far as recovering from the wounds, it wasn't as difficult a project as you might think. There were plenty of places where shrapnel had to get removed, and as I say, they did find this .25 caliber bullet in my cheek here.
Like lodged in there?
Right, lodged in. So that they kept that in a little bag for me, which I could keep for a while, and lost it, of course. But it took just 5 or 6 days, I'd say, to get over the effect of the wounds, and then the rest of the time was spent in recuperation. And once I left the mainland and got across the channel to England, I was almost ambulatory. It took me, I think, another 2 weeks to walk around properly. And so I thought I might be getting better enough to get back into the fray, but instead I got put back on another ship. And got back to America in May, just after the war in Europe ended.
Can you describe?
And that was quite a sight. To me, it was just seeing the Statue of Liberty as we came back. It was just such a great feeling of having been a part of winning that war. That's about all I can say about it.
What do you remember about the celebrations? You know, if you guys came in right around VE Day, what were the celebrations like in the States?
Well, I don't know. They got us off the boat and onto a train and went from New York to California without any stop. one of the, I remember one of the fellows on the train was able to talk to his wife, let her know about it, so she got to the train station. They were able to hug and kiss, and then he had to get back on the train, go to California. And we were in St. Louis, I think, at the time. So it was, here the war had just ended, but we were still going somewhere because Japan was still up, I was still thinking, oh my God, they're going to finish up the recuperation and go to Japan. But no, that didn't happen. I forget where I was now when the war actually ended, if I was still in California or got back to Illinois. But
could you please tell us the story of the Mickey Rooney in the pool?
Oh.
Pretend we don't know anything about that.
One nice thing about being in California was, I think, the people at Hollywood doing their best to support the war effort and be good to the military. And in my area, Mickey Rooney's family put his swimming pool available to the hospital so we could go there and have a swim. And it was just fun. Not a huge pool, but it was fun to be there and think, same pool that Mickey Rooney's been swimming in. It was fun and very generous of the family to let us do that. I had one other incident that happened at a ballroom where Betty Davis was on the stage, and she had called to someone to participate in a sketch they were doing. They needed one other person to be in the sketch. And from out in the almost end of the balcony, some guy came with his hand up. I'll do it, I'll do it, I'll do it. He crawled over everybody. And he got up on the stage, and it was Jack Wilbur, a guy that was from Downers Grove High School, a year ahead of me. And when I saw him up there, I said, "Hi, Jack." And Betty Davis looked at him and said, "Do you know him?" And he said, "Yeah, he's from my same high school." And she said to me, "You come back and get together after the show." So that's how I got to meet Betty Davis.
Wow.
Yeah, it was fun. She was very gracious. Good-looking woman, too. I was thinking of one kind of rare incident that happened when we were given a 2-day furlough when back of the lines quite a ways. We were given new pants, which we had never had taken, they just had never been cleaned or done anything with them, these pants. We got new pants. And one of the other benefits of the time off was we got to see movies. I saw one in the morning, and then went to one in the afternoon up in the loft of a barn, which was different than what happened in the morning show. And I remember sitting there, and then the movie came to an end, and I had trouble getting out, standing up, and I had trouble moving. I didn't know what the hell had happened to me, and somebody kicked out a window, let some air in, and everybody went over to the stairway, and we got out of the building. And what we discovered was that the movie projector was being run off of the Jeep, which was stationed underneath the first, on the first floor of the barn. And all those fumes were coming up and not noticed by those of us sitting around in the second floor. So we were being gassed. And the irony of the thing is that the movie was Gaslight, starring Charles Boyer and Ingrid Bergman. Gaslight. We almost died at watching Gaslight at the hands of our own army. Rare. Somebody wrote about it and got it printed in the Humor in the Uniform in Reader's Digest. But to those of us, that was not a very humorous event. To those of us who survived it.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So, before we get any further, if you don't mind, can I ask you some general questions about the war, sir?
Yeah.
Could you please tell us about any experiences you had with the German Luftwaffe? Were you ever strafed or bombed by the German planes?
No.
What about Bed Check Charlie?
No. We never were in action with the tanks.
They kept you guys separated?
Yeah, we were never involved with a tank attack or anything.
Do you remember seeing German tanks?
No.
Not even knocked out?
Not even knocked out. I can't remember that. No.
What about when you first got to the front lines, it was winter.
Right.
Do you remember anything about the German casualties?
The German casualties?
The Germans who had been killed, as you guys were...
Yeah. No, we didn't get any information like that. No, and we were never in that first couple of weeks, we were never in any big battles. We were just trying to survive that damn artillery.
I guess, though, I meant, when you would move forward into Germany, because the Germans were retreating, was it common to come across Germans that had been left behind, that had been killed, or...
No. No, I don't think so.
Did you guys have, besides the pillbox on the Siegfried line, the bunkers, did you have any other experiences taking Germans prisoner?
No. That was our only experience.
Let's see. Well, do you remember your captain, Captain Palumbo?
Captain Palumbo? I barely remember him because we just didn't see that grade of officer very seldom. Well, we were under some heavy artillery attack at one point, and it shows what happened is Well, just plainly speaking, we lost one of our members who took a direct hit that from a piece of artillery that fell right into his foxhole and completely obliterated him and the foxhole. It was just a terrible incident. But it's what you lived with every day with the artillery coming from the German retreat. And they may have been retreating, but they were still doing a lot of damage.
Thank you so much for sharing that incident. How far away was that foxhole from you?
Maybe 50 yards of that damaged foxhole was about 50 yards from Sauby's in my hole. We were always in the same hole.
Now, do you happen to know who was in that foxhole?
No, I didn't know him.
For those who don't know, sir, can you describe, to be under constant German artillery barrages, what does that do to your mind?
I wonder. What is there about me that has been affected by those 6 weeks of combat? I don't know. I can't place it. I hope it's nothing. But it's got to have some effect on me, but I can't place it.
After the war, when you came back to the States, did you have any difficulties readjusting to civilian life?
I didn't feel that way, no. Yes, I did have a few dreams. Yeah. That were a little frightening. But I think once I got out of the service and back home and entered into the college life at North Central, it was kind of the end of all problems with the military. I had a whole new chapter of life opening up, and I was eager to do it.
Sure. I know a lot of the veterans I meet mention back when you guys first came to the States after the war, cars would backfire a lot.
Yeah.
And that sounds like...
Yeah.
And that would startle some of the guys.
Yeah.
Do you remember anything about that?
No, I do remember that, yeah.
What do you remember about your...
Well, I just remember that the backfires, the sudden shots. That's all.
Did you ever go to any of your division reunions after the war?
No, sorry, I did not. Some people have asked what happened to Ken Sauby after that incident, and I really had nothing to say about it, but my son, Rob, was able to find through the internet and to locate the family of Ken in North Dakota and discover that he did survive that night, but he lived with a 100% rated disability, not able to conduct life normally. And He lived until age 76, and that's all we can know about Ken Saube, but he did survive, and he was able to run a farm in North Dakota.
Could you tell us what kind of man was Ken Saube, personality-wise?
It's hard to describe a guy that was so important to you in those trying days, but to me, he was like a giant brother that could count on him anytime to do the right thing. He was a real friend.
What was the age gap, sir?
He was about 10 years older than I, yeah. It was a time that another GI and I were going back to get more K rations, and I had to relieve myself of the pressure of my bladder and I chose to be under a shelf rock. And as I was under there, we got a couple of mortar shells came in, and I escaped unhurt because of that cover. And I credit my bladder for saving my life. Those shells landed exactly where I would have been if I hadn't had to stop.
And that's accurate, right?
Yeah.
Because they were...
Right.
If you had not stopped, you would have been walking, and that's really...
Right, yeah. Exactly.
Wow. Okay.
One of the incidents that are still a firm memory was being bunkered in a German foxhole, which we often occupied once they left. This foxhole had logs covering the top of it, and it was rather deep, at least 4 feet deep. And Saube and I were in it one night, and a 88 artillery shell landed just a few yards away from the hole. And the concussion lifted both of us off the floor of the foxhole up into the logs and down with such force, it's unbelievable. I'm surprised that we weren't actually injured by the force of that artillery. That was the German big 88s that they used as often as possible.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And the Germans, they also would do tree bursts. When they would hit the artillery on the trees?
Yeah. I don't have a memory of that right now.
No, yeah, it just depends on some certain areas. Yeah. So the last question about the war, I wouldn't even ask. Besides those Germans in the bunkers, were there any other Germans that you guys could see, like in a firefight while you were in combat? Those Germans surrendered, but were there any incidents when you were in a firefight, firing back and forth?
Yeah, no, not in our case, no. Okay.
What life advice do you want to give to future generations?
Well, I would say that if at all possible, do everything possible to avoid war and all its consequences. That's all I can say about it.
What kind of man do you want people to always think of you as?
Well, I would like them to always think of me as a man who loved his country. Period.
Perfect.
Okay. Well, this is where the bullet hit. It's hard to see now, but it's been years of skin changing.
Perfect.
This is a picture of my brother Louis, who was in the Army as a medical nurse behind the front lines in Europe. He escaped capture once and lived to tell about it. This is my second older brother.
You have to just turn it a little bit more. There you go.
Who was several months in Greenland and returned for duty and instruction into an infantry battalion in Texas, and ended up in Europe chasing the Germans out of Germany and back into Austria, and had saw the end of the war in Austria. And this, of course, is teenage soldier John Prescott. This is a photograph of me when I was 19 years old, member of the U.S. Army.
And how old are you now?
I'm 99 now. So it's 80 years difference, isn't it?
Huh?
That's 80 years difference, yeah.
What is it like when you look at that photograph of yourself, sir? If you turn it around and when you look at that, what do you think?
One lucky sombrero.
And if you keep that up, I'm gonna get a close up of it, please. Yeah. Let me just get this. Keep smiling for me, because I'm gonna come over to you. And if you look right at me, sir, big smile.
These are all the medals that were awarded for me for service. I'm very proud of them.
Let me try to get a close up. And if you do me a favor, can you hold them right tight to your chest, sir? Smile, please.
One of the incidents I remember was when my father took me, after my last furlough after basic training, he took me down to the railroad station to go into Chicago. And for the first time, I can recall seeing any tears in his eye as he wished me goodbye. But there they were, and there were mine too. I was a rifleman in Company C of the 50th Armored Infantry Battalion, 6th Armored Division during World War II. And this is my story.